historian and journalist who has set the highest standard within his profession. Tom Burke is a lifelong wrestling fan who has preserved the history of professional wrestling and happily shares that information with others. Now, talking to Tom, getting ready for tonight, he said his first match that he saw, the main event, was The Sheik versus Red Bay Sneed, December 27, 1959, in Valley Arena in Holyoke, Massachusetts. Tom then later joined the military, which took him to Europe, where he got to see many different promotions, many different styles. When he had passes to go on leave instead of traveling, back home to the United States, he took the opportunity to travel around Europe and check out very many different wrestling styles. He wrote the first article on Billy Robinson for a U.S. magazine. But to tell you a little more about Tom and to introduce him is a fellow historian, part of the world-famous Hart wrestling family, Mr. Ross Hart.
Thank you, Chad. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to be here at the Tragos Thesz Hall of Fame banquet, which is undeniably one of the most renowned and truly legitimate halls of fame in pro wrestling today. It is also a pleasure for me to introduce to you the worthy recipient of this year's Jim Melby Award, Mr. Tom Burke, for his many contributions in writing and journalism. Also for collecting and preserving many artifacts and contents, promotions and territories from all over the world, spanning over 100 years, which he has generously shared with various halls of fame and historical museums. Here's a little background information on Tom. He was born in 1946 in Springfield, Massachusetts. He grew up following wrestling on TV and in newspapers and various magazines. In junior high school, he began writing a monthly column called The Wrestling Beat for Ring Wrestling magazine. It was so well received that he became a regular writer for the magazine from 1963 to 1985. Initially, he covered results and highlights of WWF shows, that's what it was actually called back then, WZN and WWF, in Boston and the New England areas, and he also covered the smaller promotions of Jack Treffer and Tony Santos, but he expanded then to include different territories and promotions all over the US, Canada, and abroad. While Tom was stationed for the US Army in Germany in the late 1960s, he continued to correspond for Ring Wrestling magazine with highlights of various European circuits. This included the major tournaments in Germany and Austria, and the boom business periods of the UK, France, and Spain. In this process, he developed close relations and contacts with various promoters and wrestlers alike for articles and stories he wrote about them. After he returned to the States, he became active in the WFIA, the Wrestling Fans International Association, serving as the group's first president in 1969, staying on until 1980, helping organize various fan fests in many cities each year. He was also one of the first people to ever launch a monthly newsletter called Global Wrestling, with results and headlines from all over the world. That was my first introduction to him, as I used to correspond with him regularly with updates on Stampede Wrestling in Calgary. Global ran from 1975 to 1996 and inspired many later publications like the Wrestling Observer and Pro Wrestling Torch. He also started a directory called the Yellow Pages of Wrestling, 1977, devoted to profiles on stars and highlights of promotions from all over the US, Canada, Mexico, Japan, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the Middle East. Some of Tom's other accolades included authoring a comic book called The Facts of Pro Wrestling, with illustrations from Dan Pettiglia, and hosting the Wrestle Radio talk show with his friend Dan Riley in the early 90s. Also, he served on the board of directors directors for CHC, Cauliflower Alley Club, and helped many wrestlers and authors write about their careers and biographies and memoirs. In addition, he put out an All Souls newsletter each year honoring each of the stars and promoters, as well as those connected with the industry who have passed away. Tom has an incredible memory and is one of the most knowledgeable historians I know in pro wrestling who's still alive today. He's also been one of the most respected and highly regarded journalists who closely followed the code of protecting and guarding the integrity of our industry, especially during the kayfabe era. This was a period that almost never revealed or exposed the dark secrets behind the scenes events, the private lives of stars and promoters, or leaked information or storylines or angles which are unfortunate aspects of the globe today with the power of the internet and social media. Tom, as an active lifelong fan of pro wrestling, has also compiled an incredible collection of memorabilia dating back over 100 years. Includes everything from rare news clippings, photos, trading cards, souvenirs, posters, programs, and magazines from numerous territories, to historic title belts, personal letters, videos, hard-to-find TV shows and documentaries, and old box office records and receipts. It's always a thrill for me when he lets me see his personal collection during my visits with him in Springfield. He's always been such a gracious host and friend to me. Other notable guests in the past who have visited him and seen the Burke collection include Thesz, Red Bastien, Killer Kowalski, Paul and Luna Vachon, Fred and Nick Curry, Kevin Sullivan, Big John Studd, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, my brother Brett, Stephen Regal, Mike Shaw, Spanky, Tajiri, the Fabulous Moolah, and Donna Cristantello. He has devoted a lifetime of work to our industry, which has been acknowledged and appreciated by many wrestlers, promoters, writers, photographers, and fans. I also consider him to be a close friend and true historian. So please join me in congratulating Mr. Tom Burke for receiving the 2023 Tragos Thesz Jim Melby Award.
Thank you, Ross, for that introduction, and a very sincere appreciation to the selection committee of the Tragos Thesz Hall of Fame for this honor of receiving the Jim Melby Historian Award. I would not be standing here in front of you today if it were not for a number of people who took me on as being a mentor. And those people are Nat McVeigh, who is the editor and publisher of Ring Wrestling Magazine, Lou Eskin, who is the editor of Wrestling Review, a guy with big cauliflower ears called Bo Curry, Killer Kowalski, and my wrestling mama, Marilyn Neitzel, who was the fan club president for the Killer Pat Patterson fan club. I think you know he was first billed as Killer Pat Patterson back in the 60s, to Maurice Chevalier and Ron Dupree, who became the Hells Angels, and to Ginny Valiant. She ran all those fan clubs and guided me through those years. I speak in the shadow of historians like Jim Melby, J. Michael Kenyon, Don Luce, Burt Ray, George Shires, and others. The decades have passed, and my mind is not as sharp as it used to be. I can't remember dates, who won, who lost, and then again, I can't remember where I left my keys the other day. I've been a devoted fan of professional wrestling since I was the age of 12, and I continue that. I would like to share and explain something to you which has been a myth or fact of my wrestling collection. It is a fact, not a myth. In 1975, I was working in New York City as a dispatcher for Trailways bus lines. On my days off, I would trot around the city and go to various places which sold backstage magazines and consignment shops. So I go to this one consignment shop, which was located on West 49th Street. And I go in, I used to go in there, they don't have a box of pictures or programs or whatever. So I go in and I look at the box, there's nothing I'm interested in. So I said to the gentleman, I said, do you have anything else? And he says, no. And all of a sudden, a female voice says in the back, Evan, she got that wrestling prop in the back room. I said to myself, what the hell's a wrestling prop? So he goes in the back room, he walks out, holding something wrapped up in the New York Post newspaper. He opens it up, and it's the www Paige Morales spell. So I said to him, how much? He says, I want $175. I said, I don't have that money with me now. So he's battered back and forth. I said, I'll give you 125. So he's, no, I want 175. And all the voice in the back says, Irving, if you're selling the business, if you're moving to Florida, sell it to the man. So I said, I'll be back tomorrow with the money. So that is how I acquired the WWF Paige Morales spell. When I went to pick it up, I asked him, how did you get this spell? He said, this big burly Puerto Rican guy comes in and sold it to me. So that's the story there. But that's the legitimate story. It's not a fable. During my lifetime as a wrestling fan, I encountered snide remarks and other negative comments over my interest in wrestling by peers, family, and others. A few years ago, I attended my 50th high school reunion. As I was having a conversation with friends, a certain classmate who I really did not like comes up to me and says, hey, Burke, are you still doing that wrestling crap? My response was, yes, I am. A matter of fact, I did the second eulogy for Killer Kowalski's memorial service. I'm sure you did the same for your baseball hero, Ted Williams, as he huffed off with the words, F you. Kathy O'Connor walks up to me and says, Tom, he was an asshole in high school and he still is. The sport has changed a lot in the last 30 years. A great influence of show business has been the aspect of the game. The talent today may not have the look of the wrestlers in the past, or either the ring style or look, but they give the fans what they want, and that makes the box office soar. So who am I to downplay their efforts and talent? Again, I wish to thank everyone involved in this award. Thank you.